Good afternoon, everyone. The Africa Center's Afro-Century initiative is back. Remember, this initiative unites a coalition of African development finance institutions to forge a more authentic, optimistic narrative on Africa, which is the right time. More and more international organizations stress African resilience despite the COVID context. Today, we welcome one of those African regional organizations, the West African Development Bank, BOAD, and its president, Mr. Serge Ekwe. Welcome in the Atlantic Council studios.
Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to moderating this conversation, which will feature talented figures of the Washington community. Alexia Latortue, Deputy CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, nominated by the US President to become the next Assistant Secretary for International Markets Department at Treasury. Abdul Salam Bello, alternate Executive Director for Francophone countries at the World Bank Group and Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. And Emily Bell, International Finances Expert. So, happy to have you on board, Mr. President Ekwe. Let's start with your visit in Washington, D.C. For the annual IMF and World Bank fall meetings. As finance ministers are gathering right now in Washington to discuss the global economy, the ongoing COVID-19 consequences, and global taxation issues, we know now that Mrs. Georgieva has been confirmed at the head of the IMF yesterday. It seems she was supported by African countries. Are you relieved? That's my first question. What do you think about
Well, Ambassador Rama, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you very much. Well, coming back to your very question, I won't say relieved. I'm very happy. And as you can see, and as you rightly said, the number of ministers have been backing up her. The number of ministers have been supporting her. So has the board of the IMF. So it is a good news. It is a good news because so the executive MD, Kristalina Georgieva, has been supporting us, has been looking positively to what we're trying to do in Africa, in the whole world, I would say, but when I look at my remit, she's been supporting our business, she's been supporting development, and I would say it's a common issue. We share globally, worldwide, we share that issue, and she's been supporting us very much. So from that perspective, I'm very happy. Yes.
Let me just remind our audience what's going on there. These last weeks, she has been accused of pressuring World Bank staff to change data to benefit China. While she was serving as the bank's CEO, and after an investigation about these accusations, she has been cleared, and now the IMF told that they have a plain confidence in her. A question here, more than this story, the Doing Business report, because it is the heart of the controversy here. And this prominent report has been canceled since this controversy. And it was supposed to be an influential, and it was, index with countries, their rankings. Investors came when they saw a country could be trusted in this index. So now it has been canceled. Do you regret this report, doing business report, or are you like Carlos Lopez, former United Nations head of Economic Commission for Africa? Skeptical.
No, well, we need benchmarks, we need rankings, because all this is about standards, worldwide standards. When you run a business, we need no exception, and investors worldwide will look at ranking, we look at norms, standards, and from that perspective, yes, one can say that we need that, definitely. But again, I don't want to. I'm not here to investigate the case again or reinvestigate. That's not my call here. But what I can see, I can only again back the executive managing director based on what she said, and if it has been decided that this ranking needs to be cancelled, so be it, and let's move on. I think, we have so many things to do, trust me, so many things to do, and I'm really thrilled to have this opportunity to elaborate a little bit more on what we need to do, and I will try to demonstrate how we do it at the West African Development Bank, because that's our top priority again.
So you are a banker, public banker now, and before a private banker.
Yeah.
That puts you in a very good position to understand all these questions. I would like to know more about the West African Development Bank, BOAD, or BOAD,
Yeah.
and maybe to try to understand what makes, where the BOAD makes the difference in the landscape of all these African development banks, BIDC, AFDB, and even international organizations like the World Bank. What is your what value do you add in this landscape?
Look, there are somewhat like 400 development banks in the world. So it is a big business, all right. Now, what makes, what could make BOAD so different? BOAD would like to be seen as a reference bank, as a go-to bank when it comes to a number of sectors, and I will elaborate on this. In our region, the YMU region, it's 8 countries, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Mali, Niger, Guinea-Bissau. I always forget one, and Benin, if I'm not mistaken. So 8 countries, $150 billion GDP, 130 million inhabitants. We are very focused on a number of sectors which are infrastructure. How do we move from point A to point B? How do we commute from point A to point B? How do we communicate from point A to point B?
But what makes BOAD so special?
I'm coming to this. Infrastructure, energy, agriculture, and food security, real estate, and notably everything related to social housing. Last but surely not the least, health and education. We are the bank of the reference bank, a go-to bank when it comes to these 5 sectors. We're so familiar with the public and the private sector. We move on to what we call a sectorial approach, which means that in the 5 sectors I've mentioned, we want to be seen, and we are the experts. We know the actors, we know the multiples, we know who does what, where, how. We are the experts. The thing is, we are the target bank. In French, we call it cœur de cible. Now, to translate this is a little bit complicated, right? But cœur de cible, it means that whatever you want to do, anything you want to do related to the 5 sectors I've initially mentioned, you talk to us, and we'll give you the proper answer.
And when you say you, it's
BOAD,
states,
naturally, yeah.
Yeah, but who are your main interlocutors? States,
Good.
Private sector?
Both, actually. When we look at our portfolio today, it's 75% public sector, 25% private sector. And we would like, under my presidency, to move this to a better balance, to a better equilibrium. I wouldn't say 50-50, but 60-40. The reason is, you can't discuss about development of the private sector if you don't have the right infrastructure. And sometimes, yes, I do hear people complaining about BOAD not sufficiently supporting the private sector. But the one thing that is important is, let me help provide sustainable energy. Let me help provide the right roads, railways, aircraft, etc., etc. Social housing. Once we would be done with this, then we can discuss further, you see? So, yes, we would like to have a better equilibrium between public and private sector, but we do support the system, we do support
We'll
the
come
private
to the
sector.
private sector later with
Yeah.
Abdul Salam Bello, but I just would like to ask you, you were mentioning your priorities.
Yeah.
You have been in this position of president since like 1 year?
A year, yeah.
A year,
yeah.
What are you the most proud of since you are there?
Well, you know, throughout my career as a banker, investment banker, I've been looking, again, every day was, where's the transaction? How are we going to get the transaction? How are we going to close the transaction? Sitting here today in my position of president and chairman of the BOAD, the question is not, do we have transaction? The question is, we have so many transactions, we have so many things to do, so many things to do.
Yeah, but what is the most important thing you have done since you are
Since we joined, I think we are in the agenda today. People know the West African Development Bank. I mean, we've been in existence for 48 years, okay? So, at least in the region, we are very well known. If you take the example, let me give you a simple example. Guinea-Bissau, 90%, read my lips, 90% of their concessional debts is held by BOAD. I would say 80% of the roads in the country, we've been supporting that. So BOAD means something. You know, we do have impacts on the concrete development of our region and on our countries. And this, again, has impact on people's life, because at the end of the day, it's the only thing that matters. If you can't change people's life, then it's worthless.
So my next question is maybe obvious, but you are here in Washington for the World Bank and IMF for
Correct.
meetings. So what those organizations can bring to you as president of BOAD? Why are you in Washington?
Yeah, look, there's two simple things. When it comes to IMF, that's why we are we're very happy with the way things are evolving with the executive MD. The heart of our discussions today are maybe a little complicated, but the SDR, special drawing right.
You can make
Basically,
it simple, you know.
Yeah,
even
yeah.
for me. I used to be a politician, so
Mr.
I need
Minister.
explanation from a banker.
No, actually, it's very simple. It is a right. It is a right that is issued by the IMF, okay, to reinforce, strengthen. That was the initial definition, to strengthen the reserves of the central banks in the world, in case of, I would say, an attack on their local currency. Now we're working on a scheme by which these special drawing rights would be reallocated from the G20 countries, the richest countries in the world, that don't need this, basically, okay? This could be reallocated to our region, going through banks or institutions like BOAD, because we would use these means, converted in either euro, sterling, pound, or whatever. We would convert it so as to strengthen what we call our Tier 1 capital, to strengthen our capital so that we can leverage a little bit more our balance sheet and have more power, increase our balance sheet to support the financing, the funding of our development in the 5 sectors I've mentioned. This is for BOAD. So it is very critical, very critical. And to do that, precisely, the executive MD of the IMF needs to have the bandwidth. She needs to have the power. You see? So that's why we are I do agree with you. Somewhat we can say that we are relieved from we are definitely relieved. We need an executive director of the IMF with power, strong, so that she can support what is a unique opportunity for our region and for our continent to build on its own strengths.
Yeah, and can you take this opportunity as Africans, maybe to ask a bigger democratization of these institutions in, for Africans representation, for example? What do you think?
What we need is, that may come as a surprise to you, we don't need debts. Mm-hmm. The word is very simple in some ways. We are reaching savings in the world have reached the highest level ever, which means that investors have very deep pockets today, deep pockets. So our job is to be seen as interconnectors between issuers, those who need money, and those who have this money, all right? Mm-hmm. So, and we know that the investors in the world, well, usually they would request 3, 4, 5 criteria, which are, number one, yield. Okay, I'm putting my money with you, how much I'm gonna get paid, how much mm-hmm. I'm gonna get investing in your structure. 2, a format, either a bond, a loan, or whatever. These are technical issues. 3, your governance. Who are you? What is it that you do? What's your governance? Okay. 4, where are you going to invest, in which product? And are you going to, will there any possibilities to have these monies traced, and what will, at the end of the day, be the impact on population? And I strongly believe that BOAD today, we tick all these boxes. We have this capacity to talk to the markets, to talk to investors, to talk to private investors, and we speak to all the investors in the world. Give me 2 minutes, please.
Very quickly, because I need to give the floor to
Mrs.
Latortu.
So I'll make it make it 1 minute. I'll
Yeah.
make it in 1 minute.
Uh-huh.
We have earlier this year issued a sustainability bond of 750 million euro, 6 times oversubscribed, with the lowest coupon ever paid in the region, ever. So it was a première. Mm-hmm. Okay, overall. What we said to the market was, you know who we are, this is our governance. We have presented a number of projects for 1 billion euro. We're going to do X, Y, Z. And we are going to report mm-hmm. on a semi-annual basis. We are going to report everything we do with the monies. Mm-hmm. This is a big change.
We'll come back to that later, please. This time is running, and I would like to talk about maybe what could be one of your goals. I mean, regional integration, and then give the floor to Mrs. Alexia Latortu. As I said, she is a Deputy CEO of MCC. Mrs. Latortu, can you hear us?
I can. Hello, how are you?
Go ahead. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ambassador. I'm delighted to be here. MCC is a U.S. bilateral development agency that helps reduce poverty through economic growth. We have about 3/4 of our portfolio in Africa, and I'm happy to say, President Ikwe, that we're active in 6 of the 8 countries that BOAD represents and works in. So it's really a delight to be able to have a short conversation with you this afternoon. Obviously, as a regional organization, you know well that people and goods and services move across boundaries, across borders, and so must the way that we invest. So MCC is very focused on this, and it's clear to us that developing countries will grow faster, they will create more jobs, they will attract more investments if they're part of regional dynamic markets. That is something that we think about a lot, and we were very pleased that since 2018, the US Congress gave MCC the ability to design regional programs. So not just have a program in one country, but have a program that cuts across 2 countries that share a border to promote trade, investment, and economic integration. And we're indeed working on 2 such programs, one that is with Benin and Niger in the transportation area, and then one that is with Burkina Faso and Cote d'Ivoire in the energy sector. And it's hard work, regional programs. It's more complex. You really need the commitment of all the involved countries. And I'd be curious to hear your views, Serge, if I may.
Sure.
Your on BOAD's work on regional integration. Can you share with us some of the examples of the financing you're doing to promote regional integration, but also if you can be a little bit frank about how you manage those complex negotiations when you're trying to finance a deal that covers more than one country? Would be very curious to hear your views on that.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Thank you very much for your very interesting question. Well, Article 1 of our internal statements and rules is regional integration, balanced regional integration, which means what works for Guinea-Bissau works also for Cote d'Ivoire. So yes, the integration, I just want to remind you that, again, we're talking about 8 countries, 150 or 60 billion GDP. When we discuss either equity or debt financing for companies, airlines, it is all about integration. When we talk about electricity, energy in the region, naturally, we tend to look at what we call the positive externalities. Let me give you an example. When you build up a road, building a road literally means digging holes all the way through, all right? What we're trying to do here today is when we build roads, we'll try to talk to electric or energy companies to check with them whether they could, they could integrate all these cables, et cetera, to make sure that not only the roads will be built, but also we will bring electricity. All this in order to stabilize the population. If you don't give people a future, they will cross all the walls, they will go above all the walls of the world, they will cross all the channels and oceans of the world for a region for a population that doubles every 25 years. So it is a big challenge. So the question of the regional integration is a key matter. We speak the same language. We share the same currency. It's a free...
And the currency is not so challenging right now with all the debates around that for integration and regional integration?
As you can see, I'm very pragmatical, So I deal with what I have. So franc CFA is our currency.
But maybe you can push in a certain direction, like you would like the new currency or not, digital currencies or not. Do you have an opinion on that?
No, I mean, yes, I have
and so you can express that
but
opinion.
Again, first thing first. First thing first. I don't want to open too many doors at the same time. I've been in position for 1 year. Please let me try to focus on the 5 sectors I've initially mentioned. Let's do that first, and we can discuss later on. So again, regional integration is key. We speak the same language. We have our region free transfer of goods and people, again, same currency. So all these are assets, positive criteria we have to use to enhance our development in the region.
Okay, thank you very much. Alexia, would you like to add something? You're welcome.
If I may, I was very interested in what you had to say, and I wanted to underscore one more point, because often when we speak about regional integration, particularly in the infrastructure space, which you've emphasized as a core priority for BOAD, and it's a core priority for MCC as well, I just wanted to note that we sometimes focus too much on the hard infrastructure. We focus on the transmission lines, we focus on the roads, but actually the so-called soft infrastructure, do we have the same technical standards? What is the policy environment? Do we have the same regulations in terms of the weight of the truck so that when they want to cross from one country to the other, it actually can work? That piece of work around the soft infrastructure, I think may be even harder than the hard infrastructure. So I just really wanted to make a plea for sufficient attention on that side of the equation. And then I just wanted to say, if I may, Ambassador, as a final thought, and I'd like to sort of paraphrase Donald Kaberuka, who has said that he believes that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is the most important decision that Africa has made since total liberation in 1994. That is the power, the potential power of the of ACFTA to deliver poverty reduction, to deliver increasing incomes for Africans across all countries, including the poorest countries in Africa, have so much to gain if we leverage the opportunity of the free trade area. And MCC is certainly willing to partner with BOAD and others to do our part to help realize this potential.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Alexia, for these relevant thoughts on the EFTA and the infrastructure, soft and hard. And good luck on the road of the Department of Treasury. We count on you to continue to advocate for Africa there. Thank you very much. Let's go on, President Ekwe. And Alexia was mentioning the FTA, a new market, the most important free trade area in the world, which could bring a lot on the economic side. I mean, jobs for young people. That is the most important thing today, the most important challenge. I guess the new funds you got from the capital increase will help you to have the means of your policy through the Joliba plan. Did you review this plan since the COVID showed up? Have you reviewed your goals about job creation? I remember that AFDB report saying Africa's working age population is expected to grow to nearly 1 billion by 2030. Africa needs to create about 12 million new jobs. That's absolutely crazy. And your Joliba plan was supposed at the very beginning to create 200,045 jobs.
Absolutely.
So have you maintained this goal or?
First of all, when we face a crisis, the rule is very simple. The rule is cash is king. Cash is king. We need to inject liquidity in the system, no matter what. No matter what. So that's what we have done. We have injected 300 billion CFA franc, which is approximately $500 million. And it has been a swift disbursement because, again, cash being king, we have realized that we needed to inject liquidity in the system. This is one. The second thing is precisely based on our takeaway from this sanitary crisis, and we're still in there, by the way. It's not over yet. But the takeaway are as follows. First of all, everything related to health and education. Health, number one. We need to make sure that we have the proper drugs we propose, the proper drugs, medicine, doctors, etc., etc. Second thing, social housing. We have observed that if we can't again make sure that our population can live in a safe environment, it is a no-go. So everything we do now is about sustainability, is about climate, is about gender. It's everything that makes sense for not only for our generation, because again, the median age for our population, Ambassador Rama, is 20 years old, which means that you and I are grandfathers and grandmothers.
Thank you.
You and I.
Thank you.
Okay, you see? So it's 20 years old.
Very kind to me.
To us. So now, my point is, we need to talk to the next and prepare our word for the next generation. That's the challenge.
You're
You see?
absolutely right.
So, again, let's focus on the 5 basic things I've earlier mentioned. And once this is solved, then I think we could expect a brighter future.
And be able to keep African jobs,
Of course.
because they are for now they are exported. They are sent everywhere else abroad. They are not kept on the continent. So
the problem we face here is basically what we produce, we don't consume. What we consume, we do not produce.
Exactly.
Which basically leads us to this challenge where industrialization is a key word now.
Exactly.
So we need to go upper the value chain. We need to scale up everything we do. When I see these farmers selling their very red, big, juicy tomatoes on the road, day 1, and I see them day 2 still on the road, same tomatoes, and I see day 3, the same people on the same road, and I'm like, but the same tomatoes, right? So it means that we definitely need to work on the way to industrialize our processes, increase the value of our products.
So you cannot speak about industrialization without speaking about private sector.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So it was a transition to Mr. Salam Bello here. Abdul, nice to see you here. You are as well an Africa Center Senior Fellow, so very happy to have you here for this dialogue with President Ekwe. Would you like to engage a dialogue with him on that topic?
Yes, thank you very much, Ambassador Amayad, for inviting me, and very glad and honored to be part of this very great panel in front of President of BOAD, Mr. Serge Ekwe. And I want also to congratulate Mr. Ekwe for the successful capital increase he got from his board. I think it's also an expression of the confidence countries have in his vision and leadership. I think this is a good news, but it also comes in a very peculiar situation. Therefore, there are a lot of expectation around BOAD and Serge Ekwe. Looking at the pandemic currently, so especially in Africa, so it's a situation, I will say, it's a bit of concern. Looking at some figures, we see that in 2020, the pandemic led to an increase of 32 million people into extreme poverty. But in addition to that, we see that the healthcare system, education, other services have been severely affected. Looking at some specific countries that are really heavily dependent on tourism, such as Cabo Verde, Gambia, we see that those also have been highly affected. Talking about Sahel, country region I'm from Niger, we see that the pandemic compounded to the issue around security also led to also an increase of 2 million people currently who are currently internally displaced. So, but we need to work also on the perspective. We need to build back better. So to build back better and change the narrative in the region, we believe, being also alternate executive director at the board of the World Bank, we are also pushing a lot in terms of how we push to develop additional opportunities for youth and women in particular, and therefore what should be the role of the private sector. And we believe that the private sector has a stronger role to play in this situation. In particular, we believe that SMEs, MSMEs can play a disruptive role, knowing that especially the energy, the youth engage in the SMEs, MSMEs can play in that area. However, when we look at the SMEs, MSMEs in Sub-Saharan Africa, talking also on West Africa perspective, 2 issues. One is accessibility. Second is affordability. So To cut it short, Monsieur le Président de la BOAD, a couple of questions for you. First, how do you see BOAD role in increasing private investment in West Africa in particular? Second is, how do you see BOAD role in the development of SMEs, MSMEs? Finally, I know that you are very engaged in this area, partnership. How do you envisaging the partnership between BOAD and MDBs? Here, my question is a bit self-serving, coming from the World Bank, but how do you see your engagement with the World Bank or IFC, the private sector window of the World Bank Group, for instance?
Thank you, Abdul. Allow me just to add for our audience that you are as well an alternate executive director of the Africa Group, Francophone Africa Group, at the World Bank Board of Directors. So,
thank you very much for your questions. The first one related to SMEs and private sector. Yeah, of course we do support. We have taken a number of initiatives. The first one is the way we work with the banking system. Because again, BOAD is not supposed to be if you take the example of Côte d'Ivoire, we're not supposed to be the 70th or I would say the 20th banks in Côte d'Ivoire. That wouldn't make sense, That wouldn't make sense because we work on the principle of the subsidiarity, which means that everything that cannot be done at the commercial bank level will be done at our level, you see? Because we cannot be in competition with a system we sustain, with a system we support. Because we are systemic in the system, you see? So we can't be in competition with the commercial bank, but because we support the system, that's obvious. That's the first thing. The second thing is we act also as equity investors, you see? So this is the way we do support. We are invested, I would say 80% of our portfolio today is invested, equity is invested in the financial sector, and the rest being spread around between aviation, fooding, etc., agriculture, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we keep doing this role. Now, what is most interesting is that we are taking a number of initiatives to support the private sectors. We are just launching a vehicle dedicated together with the commercial banks. We are setting up a vehicle, by the way, called Cœur Samba. Those who know, they know.
You forgot Senegal a few minutes ago when we were speaking about state members. So it's a good way to catch up. Thank you.
So it's Cœur Samba, which means that basically what we're trying to do is to work hand in hand with the commercial banks so that we can support the private sector, and we would invest in a tranche called the mezzanine tranche together with the commercial bank, and we will try to convince the asset managers to invest as well on the more senior tranches, the more secure tranches, you see? But this is a way to directly support the private sector together with those who, I would say, it is their first duty. It's not our first duty. Again, if we have roads, energy, etc., and people can live in healthy houses, it is the starting point to create jobs. You see, let us work on energy. Let us work on hard and soft infrastructure. Again, in our region would would dedicate 6% of our GDP on infrastructure. 6%. China is 14 to 15%. You see? So there is a gap. So let's focus on these gaps and make sure that we have the proper, again, I agree with you, soft and hard infrastructure. Let's work on that. Let's solve this. Let's make sure that we have the renewable energy, the reliable energy, and then, it is the first step to support the private sector. So this is to answer your very first question. The second one is how do we cooperate with MDBs? Naturally, we do cooperate. We work hand in hand with the World Bank, either technically, and I just had a few hours back, I just had a discussion with one of the senior executives of the World Bank, and we were discussing guarantees. In which ways World Bank could issue guarantees to support our project, even for the private sector. So for the IFC, same question. If you cannot intervene directly, maybe through guarantees, it helps. You see, so we are very focused, we are very dedicated to this. And Ambassador Rama earlier mentioned that in our plan, yes, we mentioned that our ambitions was to create more than 245,000 jobs in 4 years. It is a challenge, and we're working on it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry, time is running, but Abdul, thank you for your questions. Very, very, very interesting. When you were answering Abdul, President Ekwe, I was thinking about renewable energy you mentioned earlier, and you are here in Washington. Washington, it's not only international organizations, it's also U.S. administration.
Of course, yeah.
So maybe we can continue on bilateral matters, USA, Africa. After years on food, after years of focus on security matters, the new Biden-Harris administration has decided to promote trade and economic engagement. What do you expect from this new administration? And after that, we'll come to Emily Bell, because one of the priorities of this administration is climate change.
Yeah.
And she has a lot to say about that. So maybe can you, before tackling the climate change issues with Emily, maybe can you tell a few words about your reaction, this new administration? What do you expect from them?
Again, first thing first, the question for us is our capital increase, and with this capital increase, we would be able to through what we call the leverage ratio, we would be able to tap the debt market, talk to investors, talk to investors where the money and the funding is, well, coming back to your very question about the administration, what we and we hope we'll have the support of the administration. It's about the reallocation of the SDR. Naturally, the U.S. administration wouldn't need that. We would need it. You see, so it's not money; it's rights. So I think it's a unique opportunities we have for the G20 countries, the richest countries in the world, to reallocate their SDR to our region, to those who basically need this, you see. So this is what we are, at this point in time, this is what we expect from the US administration. And from what we're hearing, looks like it seems to be promising.
So we are going to dig deeper with this new administration, maybe on one topic that seemed to be a priority for you a few months ago, but you did not mention it in your current priorities. But let's start with Emily Bell here, expert in these questions and author of one of the most important reports of the Africa Center this year. Emily, on climate change.
Many thanks, Ambassador Yad and Mr. Ekwe, for this very interesting conversation. I'm delighted to be with you today. And yes, I would be happy to talk about climate change. So today we know that African countries suffer the most from climate change while having contributed the least to global warming. The member countries of the West African Development Bank are no exception, suffering from floods, desertification, strong winds, coastal erosion, and so on. So the Atlantic Council Africa Center published in May a report which underlines that African countries will be key players in minimizing global climate change. Indeed, Africa has an abundance of renewable energy and often has the opportunity to build green infrastructure from the start. Yet fostering green and sustainable growth will require mobilizing billions in public and private investment to bridge Africa's infrastructure gap. So you mentioned energy and infrastructure as a priority. You mentioned as well sustainability bonds. So I would be very interested in hearing from you about that. And more precisely, my question is the following. In a post-COVID world, how does BOAD support member countries to make them resilient to climate shocks and help them achieve sustainable and inclusive growth? So how does the bank promote climate change mitigation and adaptation projects? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question and your interest for what we do. Climate change, climate is not only about population, but also about the way we feed our population, agriculture. The problem we have is that our agriculture is too highly climate dependent. And basically, it is a big issue we have to face. Today, agriculture is what, 7%, 8% of our GDP, but it's 85% of the jobs, 85%. And all this is climate dependent, you see? So the big threat is there. The big threat is there. So we're working on this, on the green barrier of the Sahel, to make sure that, you know, how do we cope with the way the desert would progress. It is a challenge. So the way we tackle this is, again, climate sustainability is a criteria we apply to all our 5 sectors. You know, climate is not a sector by itself. Everything should be seen under the scope, under the grid of climate and sustainability, which means that every project we support, we would need to see how resilient is or potentially could possibly be when it comes to climate change, how resilient every project, taken one after the other. Same thing for sustainability. When we discuss about roads, how will be the road in 5, 10, 15 years, not only today, okay? And we try to see how resilient the projects we are funding, we are financing, could resist to any climate change. So we factor in the climate change, the change of climate, the impact of the climate in the project. Again, it is all about sustainability. That's why in January, again, we have chosen this format of sustainability instead of climate, because we believe that sustainability embraces everything. Mm-hmm. So it is a deliberate choice. And we'll see. So today we are accredited to 3 international climate funds. Mm-hmm. You see, I would say the problem we face, that may come to you as a surprise, it's not the funding. Mm-hmm. No. The problem we have is the quality, is the asset, the number of assets, the number of quality assets that would need to be funded. You see, so it may be counterintuitive and not that evident, but I can tell you, we can solve, you know, the liability side of our balance sheet. You know, how do we get our funding? How do we increase our capital? Blah blah blah. These are technical things. Trust me, I know how to do that. The problem we have today is projects of quality, resilient, efficient, with impact on people. That's why we have moved into our organization now. We have moved into our sectoral approach to increase our capacity to originate transactions.
Thank you very much, President Ekwe. I have to stop here our conversation, which is very interesting though. So Thank you our participants for joining us today. Your remarks, thoughts, recommendations sometimes were very relevant, so thank you for that.
Thank you very
President Ekwe. We have to, unfortunately, to end this conversation. Maybe when you will be back in Washington, we could have the opportunity to talk about so many other issues, Sahel, women, so many important questions. In the meantime, I wish you, I give you my best wishes for your critical work. And see you and our audience later for next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your interest on what we do on Africa. Thank you very much. Merci.
Bye-bye. Thank you.